Welcome into another episode of my Dynasty Fantasy Football YouTube. Today, 5 takeaway series. As always, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Let's go. So the first takeaway is that Jayden Daniels is elite. Now, I think everyone knows this, but I wanted to just kind of give him his props because he had a great game this week. Maybe the best rookie year of any quarterback ever. 14-5 record in total now, heading to the NFC Championship game with his 45-31 victory over the Lions. And he was great. I mean, 22 of 31, 299 yards, 2 touchdowns, 16 carries, 51 yards, 9.6 yards per attempt. Didn't take a single sack. And he still had an elite game as a passer, even though he was mostly stifled on the ground. I have Daniels as my Dynasty QB1, mostly just for the age. But, you know, Daniels, Allen, Lamar, those are your top 3 in Dynasty. It's not close. And we can move on from there. There's not too much to say about Jayden Daniels. We all know we want Jayden Daniels in our Dynasty Superflex leagues. Now, Brian Robinson had a comeback this week. 15 carries, 77 yards, 2 touchdowns, just a 51% snap share. He had a good game. Touchdowns came, but didn't see a single target as all the passing game work went to Austin Eckler. And I do have some concerns about Robinson because he's banged up a lot, isn't super efficient, doesn't play a high snap share, and doesn't get passing game work. But this game showed that the Commanders still trust him as their clear starter for now. Little worried, though, long-term. Dyami Brown, probably going to see him on my stash video this week, I think. Led Commanders wide receivers with 6 catches, 98 yards on 8 targets. I mean, that was solid. Been good for 2 straight games. More production over the last 2 games than any of his seasons from 2021 to 2023. But important to note, he's a free agent, and the Commanders have so much cap space that yeah, it's nice that Brown has been good, but if Brown is coming back, he's going to be the wide receiver 4 on this team. They're going to bring in 2 other wide receivers ahead of him for sure. So my guess is Brown walks and signs some sort of deal somewhere for more money because the Commanders just have their pick of the litter. There's no reason for them to go after Brown. Terry McLaurin, 4 catches, 87 yards, touchdown, 6 targets. Had that big 58-yard catch, but 6 targets is not good enough. Zach Ertz, 5 catches, 28 yards, touchdown on 5 targets. He's probably back here if he wants to be. Ben Sinnott has never popped up. It's Zach Ertz keeping a young tight end down again. But I got to give Zach Ertz credit. He's played really well this year. And then, of course, I feel like I just say this all the time. We cannot get things mixed up. Jayden Daniels is an elite fantasy quarterback, but he is not going to have elite passing volume. We've seen this with Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Those are fantasy stars, but their teams at times have had 0 or 1 elite fantasy option. So it's not going to be many elite fantasy wide receivers on the Commanders as long as if we see Jayden Daniels having 16 carries a game, there are not also going to be 2 elite fantasy wide receivers on that team. That's not going to happen. So if that's not going to happen, and the Commanders have $93 million in 2025 cap space, it's great that they found Dyami Brown. It's great that Daniels is so great he made Brown relevant, but McLaurin can't even stand out target-wise among this competition. What about it when they sign T. Higgins and draft a wide receiver in the first round, as many are projecting? I have no interest in McLaurin at his price. So there were some great deals. Sell Terry McLaurin for Jalen Waddle and all these other things. I'd rather have Jalen Waddle straight up, 3 years younger than McLaurin. And then we finally found a deal where I would trade for a running back. McLaurin, Pittman, and Kyle Pitts for Bijan Robinson. I mean, this is 3 for 1. Really good thing. So I would easily do this, even though I don't love trading for running backs right now. I'd take Bijan Robinson here without a second thought. My second takeaway is that the Lions must revise their Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery usage in 2025. Before I get the comments of, oh, you're saying David Montgomery sucks, and I don't think so. I'm not saying he's bad. He's good. But Gibbs is elite. Gibbs is elite, and Montgomery is good. And Gibbs is being parked in the garage too often. Ironically, I think the Lions got the usage correct in this game. And I think this game is more representative of what we'll see in 2025 than the rest of the year was. I think the Lions learned something when Montgomery was out and Gibbs was seeing more work. I think they saw something in those games. And this was not why they lost. I mean, Gibbs had 14 carries, 105 yards, and 2 touchdowns and 6 catches for 70 yards on 11 targets on a 75% snap share. We cannot expect 11 targets every week. But Gibbs delivered big plays both as a runner and a receiver. Montgomery, 7 carries, 28 yards, and 25% snap share. Montgomery may not have been fully healthy. But again, this take is not about Montgomery. No version of David Montgomery ever in his career can deliver what Gibbs delivered in this game and what Gibbs had been delivering the last few weeks. Montgomery is not capable of that. We know that. So, for me, selling David Montgomery is the move. It is incredibly rare that two running backs from the same backfield are highly fantasy relevant at the same time. It comes up every few years, but it's the exception, not the rule. I mean, Ben Johnson is gone. Who knows what it's going to be like next year? It's another reason why this could not work out. Look, this year, Montgomery averaged 13.2 carries a game and 2.6 catches a game, 15.8 touches a game, but he delivered 4.2 yards per carry. He was good, but not as good as Gibbs. Gibbs was a little bit higher, but this is skewing it because it includes the 3 games Gibbs played without Montgomery. When they were both available, Gibbs only had 13.3 carries and 2.8 catches a game. Basically a dead even split. That's not continuing in 2025. Montgomery's going to get work. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I think it's going to be more like 65-35 than 50-50. And that'll help Gibbs. I mean, Gibbs was already the RB2. So we're not worried about Gibbs. But I can't see this repeating itself. I cannot see 15.8 PPR points per game for Montgomery in 2024, 16th among running backs. I'll take way under that amount and way under that rank. You'd have to duplicate 12 rushing touchdowns on 185 carries. That's very unlikely. I'm out, totally out on David Montgomery because I'm not going to have him in my top 25. I'll tell you that for redraft. He's not going to be in my top 25. So I'm going to be out, completely out. I probably have him too high in Dynasty. I think I'm looking at my ranks. I have him way too high. It's going to have to change. So you tell him for Bryce Young and Superflex. I mean, I would do that in a heartbeat. There's no question. And then for Brian Robinson and 2 picks, who we talked about earlier, if I had to choose one, I would prefer Brian Robinson, who's 2 years younger. So the starter right now. But with the 2 picks, it's an easy call for Brian Robinson there. Now, speaking of a player who's completely faded away, Isiah Pacheco. The Chiefs might have beaten the Texans, and they did, but it was not thanks to Pacheco. Pacheco contributed nothing, 0 to this victory. 5 carries, 18 yards, and no catches on 1 target. 31% snap share. Barely even outsnapped Samaje Perine. Kareem Hunt outsnapped him, and I'm not the only one saying this. Go look on X, Twitter. Hunt looked better in this game, and that is terrifying. Hunt, 8 carries, 44 yards, and touchdown, 1 catch, 2 yards, on 1 target. Look, I'm not saying that Kareem Hunt is going to be their starter next year. I don't think so. But he's been ahead of Pacheco in carries and snap share for the past 3 games. It's not just this one game. It's the last 3 games. He's been ahead of Pacheco. So we have a big problem here. Pacheco has not returned to form, and that is going to be a problem for him. And I'm done. It's done with Isiah Pacheco. Done with him. I think there are some people who say, well, Pacheco's injured. He's going to return to being the starter and effective in 2025. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. We see with these day 3 running backs, you have an injury. Elijah Mitchell played really well as a rookie. An injury. By the time he came back, the 49ers had already traded for Christian McCaffrey. They lose their jobs. An injury, gone. They don't earn contract extensions. Why would the Chiefs extend Isiah Pacheco, who has not played for most of this year and has been bad since he came back? Why would they do that as he heads into the last year of his rookie deal? They're barely using him. The season was on the line this year. They didn't use him. Chiefs are bringing in a new starting running back. I'm saying that right now. I do not think Isiah Pacheco is their starter week 1 of 2025. They have many avenues to do this. They have an extra early 3rd round pick from the Titans. So they're picking the 1st. And then those 2 picks at late 2nd, early 3rd. That's a spot. It's a deep running back class where premium running backs could be available. This is not last year. There are minimum 5, if not 7 or 8 running backs in this class that I think are better than Isiah Pacheco is now. There are also some free agent running backs that I think would jump Pacheco. I saw more from J.K. Dobbins than Pacheco this year. Certainly Aaron Jones, even though he's older, even if it's just a 1-year deal. And even Najee Harris, I think, would be the starter over Isiah Pacheco at this stage. I mean, Najee Harris at least played this year and was okay on a horrible team at times, horrible offense. They cannot repeat this running back room again. Because if the Texans had not beaten themselves in this game, the Chiefs easily could have lost this game. And their lack of running game had a lot to do with it. I'd take the 207 and 306 for Pacheco and just be done. Those picks are going to gain value. Pacheco's not. And then this ridiculous trade, Pacheco 111 and Noah Gray for Garrett Wilson and 406. I get being frustrated with Garrett Wilson, but Garrett Wilson is worth a lot more than this. So you can do this. You get Garrett Wilson, do it, celebrate, and be happy. Now, if you like my YouTube content, you should sign up for the Patreon. Right now, I'm offering a 50% discount at all tiers using the code TylerYT. You get my rankings, including newly posted rookie ranks, are live on the Patreon. And rookie content will be for patrons only through at least April. Access to the Discord, all my write-ups, and the ability to ask in advance questions for the YouTube videos. Tiers begin at just $6 a month, $3 with discount include all of that, plus options for DM fantasy advice at higher tiers. If you want to know more about the Patreon, check out my why you should join the Patreon videos on the channel. We're not going to do too long of a promo this time because I'm doing a full promo video on Wednesday where I'm going to lay out everything I'm offering on the Patreon. So check out that video if you want to know more about what I'm offering when it drops. With that said, we'll hop into my next takeaway. So my next takeaway, Saquon Barkley is incredible, but the Eagles passing offense is not. Barkley was the engine of the Eagles' 28-22 victory over the Rams. He had a big day. 26 carries, 205 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 4 catches, 27 yards. 30 touches. Dominated on them, included 78 and 62-yard touchdowns. But his success came at the fantasy expense of everyone else. Jalen Hurts, 15 of 20 for 128 yards and 7 carries, 70 yards, and touchdowns. Great as a runner, but as a passer, he didn't deliver. He had 6.4 yards per attempt. He took 7 sacks on some of those dropbacks. I think we've seen this year, Hurts is a fine passer, but when the game is on the line, the Eagles would rather run the ball over passing it with Hurts. They don't trust him to be a high-volume passer. Dallas Goedert was actually the lead receiver, 4 catches, 56 yards on 4 targets. I'm not interested much in Dallas Goedert. Devonta Smith, not there. 4 catches, 21 yards on 4 targets. And A.J. Brown vanished. 2 catches, 14 yards on 7 targets. Brown is the striking one to me. I mean, you know, there's no evidence other than the book on the sideline, but I have a feeling that A.J. Brown would rather be on a bad team that throws him the ball 10, 11 times a game over being on this team and having 2 catches for 14 yards. 35% target share does nothing if it's on a pool of 20 targets. So I'm not predicting it, but A.J. Brown could be on the move this offseason. I would not be shocked at all. Not at all. And for me, I think you have to hold A.J. Brown at this point. It's going to be tough. Stole 3 catches for 24 yards in the Eagles' 2 playoff wins. The Eagles are winning. Their offense is not going to change. Hurts has thrown for 200 yards or less in 50% of the games he started and finished this year, including the playoffs. Not good. Not good for receiving weapons. You're not going to have successful receiving weapons on that type of passing volume. It's not going to happen. So if it's not going to happen, then I don't know. The Eagles are a better team this year than they were in 2023 when Hurts was passing more, probably because of the introduction of Saquon Barkley. He only had 1 300-yard game all year. 1. Now, the window's going to reopen to sell Brown later. If Brown is traded, people are going to get excited. If time passes from this year and we see, oh, Brown is still ranked as some people are going to say, well, they're going to pass the ball more. Oh, A.J. Brown is elite. I'm going to rank him as a whatever in redraft. Then you might have another opportunity to sell him later. But nothing bad is going to happen to A.J. Brown from now until later. So you might as well wait. But so timing is key in Dynasty. But I would not like to see 2025 play out with A.J. Brown on my team, especially not if he's on this team. Because then if it starts to go badly, you have a 28-year-old wide receiver who's not producing. Suddenly the Dynasty value starts to plummet. So I'd like to move on from A.J. Brown this offseason. Now, Mark Andrews, declining 2025 Dynasty asset. And I think he's receiving a lot of the blame for the Ravens' loss. And I get it. I mean, he was a lot of the reasons why they lost. 5 catches, 61 yards, and 7 targets. But he lost that critical fumble and had a terrible drop on a 2-point conversion. He led the team in catches and targets, 28% target share, but it was all for nothing. It was all for nothing. It didn't get the Ravens over the hump. Isaiah Likely, 4 catches, 73 yards, touchdown on 5 targets. Rashad Bateman, 4 catches, 66 yards, touchdown on 5 targets. But there's not a lot of volume here, and that was with Zay Flowers out, who is still the top weapon. I don't know if you can do this now, but I'm looking to move off of Mark Andrews. Andrews was in decline in 2024. 55 catches, 673 yards, 11 touchdowns, 69 targets, 3.2 catches, and 39.6 yards a game. I can tell you, guarantee, 20% of your catches being touchdowns is not happening again. It's not happening again. That is not possible. That is a ridiculous amount of touchdowns. Kept him afloat. That's not happening again. And if that's not happening again, Andrews had a low in catches and yards per game, far below any season since his 2018 rookie year. When pass catchers, Andrews is 29, he turns 30 in early September. When pass catchers are 29 or 30 and they look like they are in decline, believe them, because they probably are. They probably are in decline. And, you know, it's not a great situation for Andrews. Flowers, Likely, and Bateman, they're all on cheap deals. Flowers, 2 years left on the rookie deal plus a 5th-year option. Likely, last year of a cheap deal in 2025. Maybe he's eligible for an extension that the Ravens could consider doing. I mean, who would they like to move forward with past 2025? I think more likely it's Likely, not Andrews. And the Ravens got a bargain with Bateman's extension that kicks in for 2 years at $12 million starting next year. So they can afford to have these 3 players. Andrews is in the final year of his deal. The Ravens can cut him before March 16th and save $11 million. That's when a $4 million bonus becomes due. Move's going to happen before then. But they can afford to keep him because Flowers, Likely, and Bateman are all cheap. They have the money to also keep Andrews. So for now, I'm leaning that Andrews is still here, which maybe is not ideal. Maybe he'd have more value if he were someone else. But you're going to know by March 16th because of that bonus. The Ravens could add another wide receiver. I mean, I don't expect them to be players for the big name free agents, but they could bring in a second-tier wide receiver or draft one on day 2. I don't think they want to just run 12 personnel on every down like they did in 2024, where Charlie Kolar is seeing a significant number of snaps. I don't think they want that. I don't think that's the goal. I think they want to have a mix of 11 and 12 personnel. And I do think a wide receiver of some relevance is added, even if it's just Nick Westbrook-Akina or Noah Brown, someone who could at least be reliable at some level. So what do? The one trade I saw will be to sell Mark Andrews for Dalton Kincaid. Now, I don't like Dalton Kincaid, but who is going to gain more value during the offseason? The younger Dalton Kincaid, the exciting player, or the old Mark Andrews? If I had to pick a player to hold, I'd rather have Dalton Kincaid. I don't want Dalton Kincaid, but this was the one offer I saw. Otherwise, you probably have to hang on to Mark Andrews and wait and see what you can do. But I do think the days of Mark Andrews being a difference-making fantasy tight end are done. They are in the past. We are not going back to that. So it's just a question of what you think he is moving forward, but it's not going to be a high-end tight end one. That's in the past. So we have one big piece of NFL news. The Bears hired Ben Johnson as head coach. I mean, this was the best coaching hire for fantasy. A great candidate. No fear of the offensive coordinator being poached because Johnson is the offensive coordinator. Now, I think a lot of people are going to speculate a lot about Johnson. I don't think Keenan Allen is really a fit for this offense. I expect him to be gone. And for the Bears to build their 2025 offense, focusing on Rome Odunze and DJ Moore as their main weapons. Of course, Caleb Williams will benefit from having Johnson's creativity. We're going to see a lot of takes about, comparing Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams to Rome Odunze and DJ Moore and trying to figure out which one of them is better. Rome Odunze and DJ Moore have zero in common with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams. So I'm not going to be a big fan of those translations or whatever. That's a lot of speculation. We don't really know how that's going to work out. There's one thing we do know, though. DeAndre Swift. Swift was a starting running back for Johnson in his first year as OC in 2022. He called those plays. He was so unliked that the Lions benched him for Jamal Williams. Jamal Williams, 262 carries. DeAndre Swift, 99. Then they brought in 2 running backs to replace him in David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, and then traded Swift away for nothing to the Eagles. So this is not hypothetical. Well, maybe this would happen. We are translating. No, Swift was the running back for Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson hated DeAndre Swift. I am telling you that there's going to be a running back addition here. It's not just going to be Roschon Johnson being the starter. There's a running back coming in to the Bears, and that will be the new starter. But I cannot imagine that if Ben Johnson threw the 2022 version of DeAndre Swift overboard, what's he going to think about the 2025 version, the much worse one? So, yeah, DeAndre Swift is the big loser from this hiring, in my opinion, because we have evidence. We can see exactly what was done with DeAndre Swift the last time he was with Ben Johnson, and it was not good. All right, we got a couple of Patreon questions. One of them is kind of timely. How much will coaching hires impact dynasty rankings? For me, some impact. It's usually not a massive change. Typically, known bad offensive coordinators or unqualified head coaches, those are not super common. Typically, if we have situations like this one that we just talked about, where a player worked with that player before and it either went well or did not, that would be an impact. But things that are like speculative of trying to translate, well, this coach did this with this player, maybe they're going to do this with this totally different player, that I don't go into that. So it's more situational for me. If Rashee Rice did not have the season-ending injury and looming suspension, where would you imagine he'd be ranked, valued in Dynasty at the moment? I mean, it's pretty simple, right? He had 8 catches and 96 yards a game over his 3 healthy games. He had 2 touchdowns over that period of time. He would be top 10. I think at this point, would he be right up there with Nakua, BTJ, Lamb, Amon-Ra? I mean, probably if he were fully healthy. Yeah, I mean, he'd be probably right there at 8. Yeah. The only thing is the suspension and the injury. And yeah, maybe I should have him even higher than I do. Right now, I think I've moved him up to wide receiver 15. But even that kind of feels a little bit low. I kind of see that there's a lot of upside with Rashee Rice. But yeah, I mean, he has massive upside. So even at wide receiver 15 with all the risks, that's kind of where I have him ranked. But yes, without all of these injuries and suspension and all that, he'd be top 8 for sure. Now, if you like the video, make sure to support the channel by subscribing. And don't forget to hit that notifications bell so you can be notified about all my exciting content as it drops. Of course, if you want my best fantasy football advice, is available on the Patreon. Dynasty content year-round and rookie content will be on there exclusively for the next couple of months. 50% discount at all tiers using the code TylerYT. Every sign-up helps support my independent content. But once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all later.